What's up, guys? We are back with another, well, not necessarily a review, a preview, a sort of a review, a pseudo review, if you will. We're taking a look at obviously there's no packaging here, a pre-production sample from Spero Toys Animal Warriors of the Kingdom 1/12 line. So they've been making 1/18 scale figures for a little while now, and they have moved into 1/12, and this of course went up for pre-order. I don't even remember how long ago it went up for pre-order, but they have a full range of figures that are really, really close to coming out, and this is a very close to final sample. It's not final, and there are things that I'll have to point out that you will be getting improved versions of, but this feels very much like you know, 95%, 90% done. He's ready to go. There's just a few things to button up here, and I'm pretty stoked to get a hold of these guys. I've messed around with them at PowerCon this year and at Legion's Con, as recently as Legion's Con, and then they asked if I would take a more in-depth look at one of these sample figures. And you know, if you got in on this Kickstarter, I will say right up front, you are going to be very happy with your order. And if you didn't order enough, you might want some more by the time you get one of these in hand, because honestly, they're so much better than I ever expected. Not that I wasn't expecting great things, but in hand, it's a whole different story than just the promise of a Kickstarter. And I know a lot of folks will agree with me on that, that once you get a figure in hand, everything sort of changes. So we're going to run through Articulation. I'm going to point out the things that aren't final, so you know you can be aware. A lot of this is normal figure, though. Like, this very much feels pretty close to a finished product. So our pale figure here has a pretty solid range when it comes to articulation at the head. He does have a pretty crazy hair situation, though. You see he's got long hair. He's got these like long mutton chop things going on, but he still has pretty good movement. The hair is going to get in the way, and that's to be expected. You got good tilt, full rotation, but of course, you know, the hair is going to do what hair does. So you got to watch that. The independently articulated neck is kind of the saving grace for what the hair does limit. It allows you to sort of just edge things out a little bit more. Arms out at the shoulder, full rotation, of course, butterfly joint. And one thing I'll note right now is that while it doesn't really move loosely, they sort of pointed out that one of the reasons why it might move loosely on this particular sample is that the torso is not sonically welded shut. That's one of the reasons why these aren't out yet, is because they hadn't gotten around to being able to get this piece done. So you can see there's a little gap there. That won't be on your finished figure. We've got a bicep swivel, you've got your double jointed elbows, we've got a lateral hinge with rotation here on this wrist, we've got a vertical hinge with rotation on this wrist. The torsos, this is the other area of, not concern, but of note, is that the ab crunch does not have a ratchet in it, so it's loosey-goosey right now. But look at the range on this guy. That is nuts. I mean, it's crazy, crazy range, and he's got a ball hip or waist situation, so you can go all over the place. What is this, like Lightning Collection? Is that what this is like? I can't even remember. I can't remember. It's like some modern toy line. I can't keep them straight anymore. So you've got really good range on this. I mean, that's nuts, right? Legs out pretty much all the way. Kick forward, kick backward. You got your thigh twist up there. We've got double jointed knees. You know, kind of all the hallmarks. There's nothing really missing. The only thing that I'll say that you don't get on this figure that you would normally expect is any kind of boot cut shin swivel. It doesn't have it. He does have really, really good hinges on those ankles, though, especially for having that foot armor. Like, it's soft enough that it doesn't get in the way, and then you still retain some really nice rocker down there. So good hinge, good rocker, all that stuff. So, I mean, this guy right out of the gate, I'm really, really happy with his articulation. Again, there are some things here that aren't final, but I think some folks are going to be really, really happy to see the potential that this figure has. He pretty much has all of the hallmarks of any modern figure line, but maybe a little bit more too, because some of the range on these joints, specifically that ab section, and then this right here with this waist, just really works to ratchet up his potential to be dynamic. The biggest thing for these figures for me, though, and I say this, you know, from the vantage point of being able to have held most, if not all, of the entire Kickstarter at this point, I've had a lot of these in hand, is that they look so close to what the original solicitations were. You know, if you go on the Kickstarter page, you can see everything that was offered, and like our pale figure here, I mean, he looks like that image. And I know that's a stupid thing to say, but it's kind of satisfying at the same time. You know, something that I ordered however long ago that was, is going to be delivered, and it's going to be exactly what I expected it to be. And in many ways, you know, better, especially because, you know, once you get it in hand, the perception changes. And I think this guy is going to surprise a lot of folks, because not only does he move really well, but the design on these, they just feel really good and they look great. I'm really, really happy with the sizing, the proportions, you know, the little things like his hands going almost down to his knees, because of course he's a monkey guy. So his proportions should be a little bit different. He looks simian. You've got all this fur all over the body. You've got the bare chest. I mean, the dude is jacked. But this gray versus the more charcoal color looks really, really good. This armor in particular, I really like the color scheme here. This sort of red, coppery color that he's got with the brown. So it's a very clashing color to his gray, but it works really nicely. Tons and tons of inlay detail all over this. So there's all sorts of sculpt all over it. Nothing is flat. Everything is detailed here. You've got, you know, even this like weird little hit of turquoise down there. It stands out, but it doesn't look out of place, despite the fact that it's really the only blue on the figure, and it does stand out, but it does look like it goes there really well. All this metallic all over him really looks good. It accentuates the armor nicely, just sort of frames everything a little bit. He does have a sheath on the back of the strap here for one sword. He has a handful of accessories that we'll get to. And of course, you know, one of the big things with this guy is just the sizing aspect of him, because it's hard to know exactly how big something is when it's not really solicited alongside other lines. And I know a lot of folks are curious what this guy's going to fit into. I think ultimately he's going to fit into a lot of things, because it has the virtue of being non-human. So he's pretty bulky, he's kind of beefy, but at the same time, I think he's going to work well across a lot of lines, and we'll showcase that a bit. One of the most surprising things, though, with this figure, for me at least, when I first got my hands on him, was the head sculpt. And I say this with the caveat of the fact that this was not a figure that I was like head over heels over. I think there's a lot cooler figures in this line than our Pale. You know, mostly the cat guys are really doing it for me. That's just sort of my thing. But this head sculpt is absolutely tremendous. I think it really showcases just the level of detail that's gone into these figures, because there's tons of sculpt all over it. The little smirk on his face, but it's the raised eyebrow that maybe at first you don't notice, but absolutely changes his demeanor, gives him some attitude and some personality, and I just love it. And of course, that's on top of the fact that he has these crazy mutton chop things that hang down, and the mohawk, and the ponytail, and while it does, you know, restrict that head a little bit, I'm all for a cool look on a figure. And this guy he just looks cool. That's really what it comes down to. He looks cool. I think he sculpted incredibly well. The paint is all super clean, super crisp. I love the color choices. And again, I can't get over this expression. Like, he looks like he knows that he's, you know, some hardcore monkey warrior guy, and he's going to throw down. And I'm really happy with that expression. I think it does the figure quite a service to have that little bit of personality, rather than just being some sort of stoic guy that happens to be the main character in this story. He definitely looks like he belongs, you know, at like the front of your ranks when you set these all up. So just tremendous sculpting, great paintwork, and really the design from top to bottom is just cool and fun and different enough that it's going to stand out amongst a sea of other figures. Now, as far as some size comparisons go, we're going to kind of run the gamut across a bunch of different lines, because, of course, this is entirely new. So we've got a 1.0 Mythic Legions here on the left, and you can see that the Pale is a little bit taller. A lot of that is the mohawk, but he is still a little bit taller. And then just because he's recent and he's here, the NECA D&D Grim Sword. And, of course, this guy is kind of in a scale of his own, but you get an idea of what he's going to look like. He's big. But the Pale has some size to him. So let's move this guy aside. And here is another Mythic Legion. So here's a Goblin. So a 2.0 smaller figure to give you an idea of how he looks there. And let's move the skeleton aside. And here is an Ultimates Turtle. And let's move the Goblin aside, and we'll do a different turtle from a different brand. Here's a NECA Toon Turtle. And then let's move, well, this Leo aside, and here's a Marvel Legends. So here's US Agent. And let's stay with Hasbro for a second, and here is, well, he's bigger than average, but here is the Classified Serpentor, and he's a pretty good indicator of how big our line here is with the Animal Warriors, because he's basically the same size. And then let's do one more that's entirely out of scale. So here's an SH Figuarts one of the androids. I mean, he's absolutely tiny. He's tiny in general, but he looks absolutely small by comparison next to these guys. So I think this gives you a pretty good idea of exactly how big he is. He is going to skew on the larger side. Think of Mythic Legions, basically, when it comes to these figures. They're very Legions-esque in terms of build, overall size, and they'll fit into a lot of different lines, again, I think because of the fact that they are animals, so they can sort of be fudged across various lines. Now, as far as accessories goes, there are a lot of accessories that go with this figure. There are also a bunch of accessory packs that are being made for this line. So we've got the stuff that goes with our Pale figure, but there was also this head that is part of one of the accessory packs, and it's to turn him into a different kind of figure, you know, maybe more like a grunt. I will mention that I'm pretty sure this guy's supposed to have pupils in those eyes, and he doesn't, although I like pupilless eyes, so I'm not upset about this look. So, you know, your mileage may vary on that. But this guy is a little bit more baboon-esque with that particular head sculpt, and the nose in particular. And of course, you know, his head has a lot more range here too. I mean, look at that up when the hair is not in play. So, you know, like I said, there is a lot of range with the heads and the neck situation with these figures. The only real difference with our normal head is that, well, there's all that business down there. Now, he does come with a bunch of other stuff. I've already touched on the fact that he includes these gripping hands on him right there. We get 2 extra sets of hands here. There are a set of style pose. They're gripping, but they're still style posy hands. And then we get a set of fists also. So there's 6 total hands there. And then we get a smattering of accessories. So he gets these pretty gnarly looking curved daggers, which I initially did not really understand how he was supposed to hold them, but it's quite obvious when you look. So he actually holds them with the curve facing outwards. So they're pretty weird looking. But they definitely look, you know, sort of jungle warrior-esque. So I do like those. The metallic on them is really, really good. He's got this gnarly looking sword dagger thing. It almost looks like a spear tip that's been turned into a sword of some kind. Nice gunmetal-y color on that blade. There's a hole through there. I'm curious what that's for. Wonder if that's just ornamental or if it serves a purpose with other figures. I don't quite know. And then we get this sort of curved scimitar-esque sword, which I really like this one. This is probably my favorite of what he comes with. And, you know, like I said, he does have the sheath on his back. You can put this in there, or this fits in there also pretty easily. I feel like this is probably better because it has that hilt on there, so it's not going to come out at all. Let's just leave it in there. And then he also has this axe, which has a bunch of inlay detail, almost like gear work in there in some ways. But I really, really like these accessories. They're all very like tribal looking, you know, very old world, so there's nothing modern about these really. But he does come with a bunch of stuff, like there's all sorts of different accessories, a bunch of hands, and then again, this is part of an accessory pack, but there's a whole bunch of that with this line, so a lot of figures can be transformed into different styles, different interpretations just by popping a new head on. So yeah, I mean, again, not a finished product, pre-production sample, can't stress that enough, but I'm super, super excited for this line. I went pretty deep on it, kind of sight unseen. You know, I made a pretty big order. Well, I think it's a pretty big order anyway. And I'm getting a lot of these figures, and I'm really excited to see them in hand and get finished product. But getting the opportunity to mess with them at PowerCon, at LegionsCon, and now this particular version here has really got me excited for these figures, made me really happy with my purchase. Glad I got what I got. So again, there are some things about this figure that will be fixed, you know, that seam, the ab crunch will be ratcheted, things like that, but this guy is really, really close to being done. I mean, I think they've got a really solid figure here, and this line is definitely something to take a look at. I'll put links down below to all their places where you can get a hold of them, find the figures, all that good stuff, but I would definitely not sleep on these. So that's going to do it for this look at the Animal Warriors of the Kingdom Primal Pale. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.